the intellectual who walked away from academia to teach in silence. Leo, what happens when the pursuit of knowledge, the very engine of intellectual life, becomes a cage? Imagine a mind, honed by years of rigorous academic discourse, steeped in the grand traditions of philosophical inquiry, standing at a precipice, not a precipice of doubt in the value of thought, but a precipice of method. Consider Leo, a man who spent 2 decades immersed in the hallowed halls of academia, dissecting arguments, publishing papers, shaping young minds through lectures and seminars. His life was, by all outward appearances, a testament to the intellectual life. He moved through the world with a quiet intensity, his words carefully chosen, his insights often piercing. Yet beneath the surface of this esteemed career, a profound disquiet had begun to brew. It wasn't a rejection of truth, nor a weariness of the mind's tireless work. It was a growing dissonance between the active intellectual engagement as practiced within the academy and the essence of what he believed true understanding required. The academy, Leo came to feel, often prioritized the performance of intellect over its genuine cultivation. The constant need for publication, for citation counts, for the subtle art of intellectual one-upmanship, began to feel less like a path to wisdom and more like a complex, often exhausting, game. The very structure designed to foster deep thought, he observed, could inadvertently incentivize shallowness. The quick, the trendy, the easily digestible argument that garnered attention rather than the slow, painstaking wrestling with fundamental questions. He saw brilliant minds trapped in echo chambers, their ideas refined and reshaped, not by genuine challenge, but by the need to fit into prevailing academic narratives. The vibrant, messy, often contradictory nature of profound inquiry seemed to be smoothed over, professionalized, and ultimately diluted. This isn't to dismiss the immeasurable contributions of academic philosophy, nor the dedication of those who thrive within it. But for Leo, the air had become thin. The constant pressure to articulate, to defend, to prove every nascent thought, felt like a premature death sentence for the ideas themselves. He found himself craving a different kind of space, one where contemplation could breathe, where questions could gestate without the immediate demand for a definitive answer, where the pursuit of understanding was a solitary, internal pilgrimage rather than a public performance. His decision, therefore, was not one of intellectual capitulation, but of strategic retreat. He walked away from the tenure track, from the conferences, from the departmental meetings, not to abandon philosophy, but to reclaim it. His departure wasn't a dramatic public renunciation. It was a quiet, almost imperceptible shift, like a river changing its course without fanfare. He left the familiar landscape of university buildings and lecture halls, seeking a different kind of classroom. A classroom without walls, without syllabi, without students graded on their ability to regurgitate complex theories. He sought a place where the teaching might happen not through pronouncements, but through a profound, almost sacred, silence. This is the paradox that draws us in. An intellectual, steeped in the very traditions of communication and debate, choosing to teach in silence. What does it mean to teach without speaking? What kind of knowledge can be imparted when the primary tool of instruction is withdrawn? What can we learn from a life dedicated to thought, which then chooses to step away from the forums where thought is most overtly celebrated, to find a new way of sharing its light? This journey into Leo's quiet revolution invites us to question not just the nature of teaching and learning, but the very essence of how we come to understand ourselves and the world around us. And perhaps, to discover a deeper, more resonant way of being. Leo's departure wasn't a rejection of dialogue, but a redefinition of its very parameters. He recognized that the academic arena, for all its intellectual rigor, often fostered a dialectic that was fundamentally adversarial. The goal, frequently, was not to arrive at a shared understanding, but to win the argument, to dismantle the opponent's position. This competitive edge, while sharpening critical faculties, could also erect formidable barriers to genuine empathy and collaborative discovery. Leo yearned for a form of engagement that was less about critique and more about cultivation. He envisioned a space where the sharing of ideas was akin to tending a garden, nurturing growth, providing light and water, and allowing each seed of thought to blossom in its own time, without the immediate pressure of pruning or harvesting. This meant stepping away from the structured debates and peer-reviewed journals, and instead seeking out environments where presence and quiet observation could become the primary modes of transmission. Furthermore, the very act of articulating complex philosophical ideas can, paradoxically, limit their reach and depth. Spoken or written words, by their nature, impose a linearity and a form that may not fully capture the multifaceted, often ineffable, nature of existential truths. Leo felt that certain profound insights were best apprehended not through explanation, but through a more direct, intuitive grasp. Consider the experience of witnessing a breathtaking natural phenomenon, a sunrise painting the sky with impossible hues, or the silent, majestic sweep of a hawk in flight. These moments often transcend language. Attempting to dissect them verbally can diminish their impact, reducing the sublime to a mere description. Leo sought to create a similar space for philosophical contemplation, where the sheer experience of being present with a profound question, or with the quiet unfolding of one's own inner landscape, could become the lesson itself. Building on this, however, Leo understood that silence was not an absence of communication, but a different kind of communication. It was the communication of being, of stillness, of a shared attentiveness. He began to seek out opportunities to simply be present with individuals or small groups, not to lecture, but to embody a certain mode of inquiry. This might involve periods of shared meditation, long walks in nature, or communal activities that fostered a sense of shared purpose and quiet reflection. In these settings, the absence of verbal instruction created a vacuum, and it was within this vacuum that the participants were invited to fill the space with their own contemplation, their own questions, their own emerging understandings. The teacher's role, in this context, was not to provide answers, but to create the conditions for the student to find their own. It was a subtle yet profound shift from imparting knowledge to cultivating wisdom, from leading to enabling. Another crucial layer is the impact of this approach on the learner's internal world. When information is passively received, it can remain external, a set of facts or theories to be memorized. When a learner is compelled to actively engage their own cognitive and emotional faculties in the absence of explicit direction, the learning process becomes deeply internalized. Imagine a musician who spends years meticulously practicing scales and arpeggios, only to discover that true mastery comes from improvising, from responding intuitively to the music itself. Leo's method aimed to foster this kind of intuitive grasp of philosophical concepts. By stripping away the scaffolding of direct instruction, he encouraged individuals to develop their own internal compass, to navigate the terrain of complex ideas with their own inner resources. This cultivates a resilience and a self-reliance in their intellectual journey, fostering a deeper, more personal connection to the truths they uncover. This is not about withholding knowledge, but about empowering the seeker to discover it for themselves. In the most profound way possible, the intellectual tradition, in its earnest quest for clarity, sometimes risks distilling profound human experiences into overly neat categories, thereby abstracting them from the very lived reality they seek to illuminate. Leo's departure from the academy, and his subsequent embrace of silent teaching, represents a profound recognition of this tendency. He understood that the nuances of existential angst, the subtle currents of moral intuition, or the ineffable beauty of aesthetic appreciation often resist definitive linguistic encapsulation. Consequently, his approach sought to bypass the intermediary of spoken or written discourse, aiming instead for a more direct experiential encounter with these fundamental aspects of being. Consider, for instance, the Socratic method of its power lying in its relentless questioning, exposing inconsistencies in belief. While invaluable for sharpening logical acuity, it can inadvertently foster a certain intellectual detachment from the emotional weight of those beliefs. Leo, conversely, might guide participants through a period of shared quiet reflection on a challenging ethical dilemma, perhaps one drawn from contemporary events or personal histories. Instead of dissecting the abstract principles of justice, he would allow the participants to sit with the discomfort, the conflicting loyalties, the visceral reactions that such a situation provokes. The lesson, in this instance, would not be a lecture on utilitarianism versus deontology, but the cultivation of empathetic understanding and the development of a more nuanced moral sensibility through direct, unmediated experience. This isn't about avoiding intellectual rigor, but about grounding it in the soil of felt experience, where true wisdom often takes root. Furthermore, the very structure of academic discourse, with its emphasis on argumentation and proof, can sometimes create an environment where vulnerability is perceived as a weakness rather than a gateway to deeper insight. Leo's chosen path offered an alternative paradigm. In the quietude of his new classroom, the absence of pressure to perform intellectually or to defend one's position allowed for a different kind of relational dynamic to emerge. Participants, freed from the need to project an image of intellectual mastery, could more readily express their uncertainties, their doubts, even their moments of profound confusion. This shared vulnerability, fostered by the teacher's own quiet presence, became the fertile ground for genuine connection and mutual learning. It was in this space of shared openness that the most transformative lessons could unfold, teaching participants not just about philosophical concepts, but about the profound interconnectedness of human experience. The practice of silent teaching also necessitates a radical shift in how one perceives the role of the educator. Rather than being a purveyor of information, the silent teacher becomes a facilitator of awareness, a catalyst for internal exploration. Imagine a master gardener who, rather than dictating how each plant should grow, meticulously prepares the soil, ensures adequate sunlight and water, and then trusts in the inherent vitality of each seed. Leo's pedagogy mirrored this approach. He would create environments conducive to introspection, perhaps a quiet studio, a natural setting, or even a shared communal activity that encouraged mindful participation. Within these carefully curated spaces, the teaching occurred not through direct instruction, but through the subtle influence of presence, through the modeling of attentive listening, and through the creation of opportunities for participants to engage with their own inner worlds. The aim was to empower individuals to become their own intellectual guides, to cultivate their own capacity for critical thought and profound understanding, unburdened by the external imposition of doctrines or theories. This approach respects the autonomy of the learner, fostering a sense of agency in their intellectual and spiritual development. Now, let's delve into how Leo's unconventional pedagogy addresses the pervasive challenge of intellectual isolation, phenomenon often exacerbated by the highly specialized nature of academic pursuits, where individuals can become deeply entrenched in their specific fields, leading to a diminished capacity for cross-disciplinary understanding or even empathy with those outside their immediate intellectual circles. Leo's silent approach, by stripping away the jargon and the highly codified language of specific disciplines, inherently fosters a more universal mode of communication. Consider a group of individuals from vastly different professional backgrounds: an artist, an engineer, a therapist, a historian, brought together in a shared space of quiet contemplation. Without the immediate need to translate their specialized knowledge into a common academic tongue, they are prompted to engage with fundamental human experiences and questions on a more primal, intuitive level. This shared vulnerability, born of confronting complexity without the crutch of disciplinary jargon, can forge unexpected bonds and cultivate a profound appreciation for diverse perspectives, thereby dismantling the intellectual silos that often fragment our collective understanding. Building upon this, the practice of silent teaching also offers a potent antidote to the anxiety of performance that frequently accompanies learning in more conventional settings. The pressure to articulate oneself perfectly, to impress peers or instructors with one's intellect, can stifle genuine curiosity and lead to a reluctance to explore nascent or unconventional ideas. Leo's method, by removing the spotlight of public discourse, liberates participants from this burden. Imagine someone grappling with a deeply personal existential question, one that feels too raw or too nascent to articulate. In a silent setting, this individual is not compelled to present a polished thesis. Instead, they are given the space to simply be with the question, to explore its contours within their own consciousness. This cultivates a more authentic and courageous engagement with the material, allowing for a deeper, more integrated understanding to emerge organically from within, rather than being imposed from without. Furthermore, consider the impact on the development of metacognitive skills, the ability to think about one's own thinking. When direct instruction is absent, learners are naturally compelled to monitor their own comprehension, to identify gaps in their understanding, and to devise their own strategies for bridging those gaps. This active self-regulation is crucial for developing lifelong learning habits. Picture someone encountering a complex philosophical text or concept without a guiding lecture. They must actively engage their critical faculties, perhaps by rereading passages, making notes, or seeking out analogous concepts in their own experience. This process of self-directed inquiry fosters a robust intellectual independence, equipping individuals with the tools to navigate challenging ideas long after the lesson has concluded. It transforms learning from a passive reception of information into an active, empowering process of self-discovery. The silent approach also offers a unique avenue for exploring the relationship between knowledge and embodiment. So much of academic learning is disembodied, focused on the abstract manipulation of symbols and ideas. Leo's method, however, often incorporates practices that ground philosophical inquiry in the physical reality of the body and the environment. Think of a guided meditation session focused on the impermanence of all things, where participants are encouraged to feel the subtle shifts in their own breath, the rising and falling of their chests, as a tangible manifestation of this philosophical principle. Or consider a walking meditation through a forest, where the act of placing one foot in front of the other, the sensation of the earth beneath one's feet, becomes a lived experience of interconnectedness and growth. These embodied practices provide a visceral, intuitive understanding that complements and deepens intellectual comprehension, fostering a more holistic and integrated form of wisdom. This silent approach also offers a potent means of cultivating the capacity for discerning subtle shifts in consciousness, a skill often underdeveloped in environments saturated with constant external stimulation. When the external noise is deliberately muted, the internal landscape becomes more apparent, allowing individuals to observe the ebb and flow of their own thoughts, emotions, and sensory perceptions with greater clarity. Consider how a seasoned musician can detect minute variations in pitch or rhythm that might escape the untrained ear. Similarly, Leo's method aims to attune the learner to the subtler frequencies of their own inner experience. This heightened awareness isn't merely introspective, it has profound practical implications. For instance, when faced with a complex interpersonal negotiation, an individual who has cultivated this internal discernment might more readily perceive underlying emotional currents or unspoken intentions in the other party, allowing for a more nuanced and effective response than one solely reliant on logical analysis. This ability to read the room on a deeper, more intuitive level is a hallmark of profound wisdom, and silence serves as the essential training ground. Furthermore, the silent pedagogical model inherently fosters a profound respect for the individual journey of understanding. In a lecture hall, the same information is presented to all students simultaneously, with the expectation that they will process it in a largely uniform manner. Leo's departure from this model acknowledges that each person's cognitive architecture, life experiences, and internal pace of assimilation are unique. Imagine a sculptor who, rather than dictating the final form of a clay figure, provides the raw material and the necessary tools, then allows the artist to shape it according to their own vision and skill. Leo's role is analogous. He creates the conditions for intellectual exploration, providing conceptual frameworks or contemplative prompts, but ultimately, the intricate work of weaving these into a coherent personal understanding is left to the individual. This approach cultivates a deep sense of intellectual autonomy and ownership, empowering individuals to become active architects of their own knowledge, rather than passive recipients. This emphasis on self-directed learning also extends to the development of intellectual resilience. When learners are consistently provided with clear, step-by-step instructions, they may become adept at following a prescribed path, but less equipped to navigate unfamiliar intellectual terrain independently. Conversely, by engaging in silent contemplation and problem-solving, individuals are compelled to confront ambiguity and to develop their own strategies for overcoming intellectual hurdles. Think of a seasoned sailor who, having weathered numerous storms, develops an innate sense of how to read the wind and waves, adapting their course as needed. Leo's silent classrooms, in essence, are the training grounds for developing this kind of navigational prowess in the realm of ideas. When faced with a challenging concept without immediate external guidance, learners are forced to draw upon their internal resources, to experiment with different approaches, and to learn from their own attempts, thereby building a robust capacity for independent intellectual problem-solving. Finally, consider the transformative potential of silence in fostering a sense of shared humanity, particularly when confronting universal existential themes. While academic discourse often focuses on the analytical dissection of abstract concepts, Leo's silent approach invites participants to connect with these themes on a visceral, deeply personal level. Imagine a group engaged in a period of quiet contemplation on the nature of loss. Instead of discussing theories of grief, they might be invited to simply sit with the felt experience of absence, to acknowledge the quiet ache that such experiences leave behind. In this shared, unarticulated recognition of a fundamental human condition, a profound sense of solidarity can emerge. This shared stillness, this unspoken acknowledgement of a common vulnerability, can forge a connection far deeper than any intellectual debate, reminding us that beneath our diverse experiences and perspectives, we share a common human core, capable of both profound suffering and deep empathy. The practice of silent teaching, as embodied by Leo, fundamentally reorients the learner's relationship with knowledge from one of passive reception to active co-creation. This is particularly evident in how it fosters an appreciation for the incremental nature of understanding, a process that often unfolds through patient observation and subtle internal shifts rather than dramatic pronouncements. Consider the experience of learning a complex craft, like pottery. An instructor might demonstrate the basic techniques, but true mastery comes from the countless hours spent at the wheel, feeling the clay respond, making minute adjustments to pressure and form. Leo's approach mirrors this. He provides the foundational elements: a quiet space, a thought-provoking prompt, an atmosphere of gentle attention, and then trusts the individual to engage in the meticulous, often unglamorous work of shaping their own comprehension. This cultivates a profound respect for the process of knowing, where insights are not delivered fully formed but are gradually coaxed into existence through sustained, quiet effort. It teaches that wisdom is not a destination reached in a single leap, but a path walked one deliberate step at a time. Furthermore, this method inherently cultivates a unique form of intellectual humility. When the spotlight is removed, and the pressure to demonstrate expertise is relinquished, individuals are more inclined to acknowledge the vastness of what they do not know. Imagine a deep-sea explorer charting unknown territories. Their expeditions are characterized by constant discovery, but also by an acute awareness of the immense depths yet to be plumbed. Leo's silent classrooms offer a similar experience in the realm of ideas. Participants are encouraged to explore the edges of their understanding, to venture into unfamiliar conceptual territories without the safety net of a readily available expert explanation. This fosters a healthy skepticism towards easy answers, and a deep appreciation for the ongoing, often lifelong, nature of intellectual inquiry. It's a recognition that true wisdom lies not in possessing all the answers, but in the continuous, humble pursuit of deeper questions. Now, consider how this applies when you face a complex ethical quandary in your personal or professional life. Instead of immediately seeking external advice or diving into academic treatises on moral philosophy, Leo's approach would suggest finding a quiet space, perhaps a walk in nature, or a period of focused meditation, to simply be with the dilemma. This involves paying close attention to your own internal responses, your gut feelings, your hesitations, the subtle emotional currents that arise as you contemplate different courses of action. This isn't about avoiding intellectual analysis, but about enriching it with the nuanced data of your own embodied experience. It's about recognizing that your intuitive responses, when attended to with patience and non-judgment, can offer invaluable insights that pure logical deduction might overlook. This practice encourages a more integrated approach to decision, where head and heart, analysis and intuition, work in concert. Another crucial layer is the development of an internal locus of control regarding one's own intellectual growth. In traditional educational settings, external validation grades, praise from instructors, peer recognition often serves as a primary motivator. Leo's silent pedagogy, however, shifts the locus of motivation inward. The satisfaction derived from a hard-won insight, the quiet triumph of unraveling a complex idea through one's own sustained effort, becomes the intrinsic reward. Imagine a musician who practices diligently not for applause, but for the sheer joy of mastering a difficult passage, the internal resonance of perfectly executed notes. This intrinsic motivation fosters a far more durable and self-sustaining approach to learning. It cultivates individuals who are not dependent on external affirmation to pursue knowledge, but who are driven by an authentic, internal curiosity and a deep-seated desire for personal growth. This is the bedrock of genuine intellectual autonomy. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've traced the contours of a profound reorientation, a deliberate step away from the familiar architecture of intellectual discourse towards a more elemental engagement with understanding. It's as if the intricate scaffolding of academic debate, while undeniably useful for constructing robust arguments, can sometimes obscure the very foundations of lived experience it seeks to illuminate. The threads we've explored suggest a convergence, a movement towards recognizing that true intellectual growth often blossoms not in the arena of public assertion, but in the quiet cultivation of internal awareness. The echoes of dialogue, the structured exchange of ideas, begin to recede, making way for a different kind of resonance, one that emanates from within, nurtured by stillness and attentiveness. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the cumulative effect of these insights, a gradual shedding of external validation in favor of an internalized compass, a deepening trust in the subtle currents of one's own perception, and an appreciation for the often unseen labor of genuine comprehension. It's akin to the slow unfurling of a fern frond, each delicate curl a testament to a process that cannot be rushed or dictated, only nurtured. The emphasis shifts from the performance of knowing to the embodiment of wisdom, from the articulation of theories to the lived experience of their truth. The very air seems to change, becoming less about the sharp, incisive edge of critique, and more about the expansive, permeable space of presence. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, illuminated not by the pronouncements of external authority, but by the gentle, persistent glow of inner inquiry. We are led to question the assumed efficacy of constant articulation, to consider the fertile ground that lies beyond the spoken word. The journey has brought us to a precipice, not of doubt, but of potentialist space, where the most profound lessons might be learned not through instruction, but through the quiet, courageous act of simply attending. The convergence of these ideas points toward a deeper understanding of how we truly come to know, suggesting that the most transformative insights often whisper rather than proclaim, waiting patiently for us to quiet the noise and listen. The intellectual who walked away from academia, seeking to teach in silence, offers us not an abdication of thought, but a profound reimagining of its transmission. Leo's journey underscores a critical realization that the pursuit of wisdom, while often amplified by dialogue and debate, finds its deepest roots in the fertile soil of inner attentiveness. The very act of stepping away from the clamor of constant articulation invites a recalibration, a turning inward to discover the quiet, persistent hum of truth that lies beneath the surface of our most cherished intellectual constructs. It is a testament to the idea that true understanding is not merely accumulated knowledge, but a transformation of being, a subtle shift in perception cultivated through patient, often unobserved, practice. This transition from the external forum to the internal sanctuary speaks to a deeper human need, the need to connect with knowledge not as an abstract entity, but as a lived experience. The silent classroom, in its essence, becomes a space where the learner is not so much instructed as invited to awaken. It's an invitation to recognize that the most profound lessons often arrive not as pronouncements, but as quiet revelations that emerge from within, coaxed forth by stillness and a willingness to engage with the unarticulated depths of our own consciousness. The intellectual who chooses silence does not abandon the quest for truth. Rather, they seek to embody it, to allow its resonance to guide not only their own understanding but also, subtly, the unfolding awareness of others. In this quiet space, the distinction between teacher and student begins to blur, replaced by a shared exploration of the vast, uncharted territories of existence. The emphasis shifts from the definitive pronouncement to the open-ended question, from the polished argument to the raw, evolving experience. It suggests that the most potent form of teaching might be found not in the articulation of answers, but in the cultivation of the capacity to ask the right questions, and to sit with them, patiently, until their own inherent wisdom begins to emerge. This approach honors the inherent intelligence within each individual, trusting that the deepest learning occurs when we are empowered to discover, rather than simply to receive. The true practice, then, begins not with the acquisition of new information but with the quiet discipline of attending to what is already present, the subtle shifts in our own awareness, the unexpressed wisdom that resides within our being. Leo's journey is a gentle, yet powerful, reminder that while the academy may sharpen the tools of intellect, it is in the quietude of our own inner landscape that the most profound and transformative understanding takes root. It is a call to recognize that the greatest lessons are often learned not in the grand pronouncements of the lecture hall, but in the silent, patient unfolding of our own conscious experience. This path, though less visible, offers a more enduring and deeply resonant form of wisdom, one that continues to teach long after the words have faded.